Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Gabby and welcome. If you are new to my channel, you've never seen my face before, never been on this channel, here on my channel, I cover true crime content. All of the content that I cover is more on the vintage side. It's all 20 years or older, so if that's something you might be interested in, maybe go down below and hit that subscribe button and quite possibly turn on the post notifications to be notified when I upload. I also wanted to say before I get to the video, my merch is still up, my brand new merch design, and you guys have been buying it and it literally just like melts my heart. Mine should be here pretty soon, so I'm probably gonna be rocking it in my next video. It's something that I've taken a lot of time on. I worked with the artist for a while. She absolutely did such an amazing job on it and I'm so proud of it. And if you do buy any of the merch, please take a picture and send it to me. I really want to see you guys wearing it. And remember that a part of the profit from my merch being sold is going to be put to the side and it's going to go towards true crime related fundraisers. Now here on my channel for the last 4 months of the year, I do this pretty much every year. This is the 3rd time doing it. I have a different theme for every single month and September is always Solved September. So every single video this month is going to be about a solved case, which I am so excited for because solved cases, they're just as important as unsolved cases because they give hope to the cases that are still unsolved. With all that being said, let's get right into the case. This is the solved murder of Melissa Lee. Melissa Ann Lee was born on February 2nd of the year 1978. In the year 1993, Melissa was 15 years old. Melissa's mother, Sharon Lee, described Melissa as sweet, gorgeous, happy, and friendly. She was a good girl who aspired to be a model, and she enjoyed spending time with and helping the elderly. She was a girly girl who enjoyed dressing up and rarely left home without putting on lipstick and eyeliner. She was easy to get along with and had many friends. A friend of hers named Sarah Hinckley said she was always a little bit jealous of Melissa, that Melissa was beautiful and charismatic and she wanted to be just like her. For her and many others, Melissa was someone to look up to. This story takes place in Washington State and the date is April 13th, 1993. Now that night, Melissa was home alone. Her mother was working. Her mother worked as a bartender at a local bar. And Melissa that night was supposed to have a friend come over and spend the night. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but this friend did not end up coming over. Melissa did have siblings. None of these siblings were home that night. And at around 9:30 p.m., she phoned her mother and it was kind of just a check-in call to see that Melissa was doing okay. So we know at 9:30 she was home. Now a little bit after midnight, Melissa's mother, Sharon Lee, came home with her fiance and Melissa was nowhere to be found. Melissa was a teenager. She could have just gone out for the night, but Sharon knew immediately that something was off. The front door was left ajar, the living room table was pushed out of its normal place, an ashtray and a jar of peanuts were knocked over onto the floor, and a glass of milk was spilled. There was also a pack of Marlboro cigarettes and a lighter left behind that did not belong to Melissa. The room also smelled of chemicals. You can call it mother's instinct or the fact that the living room was in disarray, but Sharon Lee knew that something was wrong and she was not going to just sit around and wait for Melissa to possibly show up. That very day, she filed a missing persons report. So she notified authorities and she was hoping that they would find Melissa soon. Now that same day, they did find Melissa, but it was not the way that they hoped for. At around 3 p.m. on April 14th, 1993, the lifeless body of Melissa Lee was located. Her remains were found in a brushy ravine under the Edgewater Creek Bridge on Mukilteo Boulevard at the far west end of Everett city limits. She was found wearing a black San Jose Sharks sweatshirt, orange and pink shorts, and dark-colored socks. Her clothes were extremely disheveled and she was not wearing any shoes. Her underwear was also on backwards. Sharon told authorities that these were the type of clothes that Melissa would wear to bop around the house in, not clothes she would ever wear to leave the house in. There was also a strange stain found on one of the items of clothing that would be noted as a piece of evidence in the case. She had no traces of alcohol or drugs in her system, but the toxicology report stated that she had traces of ethyl ether in her system. Ethyl ether is a colorless compound and has a history of being used as an anesthetic and a very debilitating intoxicant. There were also traces of heptane in her system. Heptane is one of the main components in gasoline and smells just like it. Friends and family members of Melissa could not believe their reality. They could not believe what was going on. Melissa in one night was taken from all of them. Now, authorities immediately started looking into Melissa's personal life. Now, Melissa was a good girl. She had no real run-ins with authorities. They were never called to the home for any reason, but authorities did realize pretty soon that Melissa had contact with some suspicious individuals. She had acquaintances that were involved in gangs. This was something that authorities definitely originally looked into, but it didn't seem like any of these gang members had any involvement in Melissa's murder. But it was always something through the years that authorities kind of kept in the back of their head or off to the side to occasionally look back into. Sharon Lee said that all of these gang members that Melissa supposedly knew, they were never really on her radar. She never really thought that they had any involvement in her daughter's murder. They all seemed to really care about Melissa, and all of them attended Melissa's funeral. So authorities started going through Melissa's room. They started looking through all of her stuff. And this is when they located her journal. And the words written in her journal would be what ultimately led them to solving this case. Melissa's last journal entry was on April 12th, and she wrote, "I hope to God we get back together," in which she was referring to an on-again, off-again boyfriend she had. But the month earlier before this entry is when she brings up a man who would be one of the first suspects in this case, a man named Alan Edward Dean. On March 14th, 1993, she writes, "Met Alan on the Nightline over the phone." Then the next day, she wrote, "Alan picked me and someone else up at 4:15 p.m. and we went out to eat, then to Fantasia, then went home." So you're all probably wondering, like, what is Nightline? What is that? Well, Nightline, it's spelled N-I-T-E line. It was basically Tinder of the 1990s. It was also referred to as a party line or a date line. It was a place where you could connect to other strangers in your area over the phone. Of course, it sounds very dangerous, but like I said, it was basically kind of like Tinder of the 1990s. Even though there's photos on Tinder, you never really know exactly who you're talking to. But it was something during this time, especially in this area, people did it to just kill time and meet new people. Well, this man that she met, Alan Dean, he was 35 years old. And they also found Alan Dean listed in her phone book. Except when they talked to him on May 8th of 1993, because they started calling everybody in her phone book, he wasn't listed under Alan, he was listed under Mike. Snohomish County Detective Greg Rinta met with Alan Dean at his apartment, an apartment that was coincidentally located only 3.5 miles from where Melissa's body was found. Alan Dean told authorities that he used the name Mike or Michael on Nightline. He didn't usually give out his actual name when he first started chatting with someone new. He told Greg Rinta that he did remember Melissa and that they had met on the talk line and went out for a date or two. He claimed it never escalated to anything sexual. He said he was working as a mechanic in the interior shop at the Everett plant as an assembler of decorative panels at the campus along Airport Road. He said, though, that for the last few months he was on disability for a back injury that prevented him from being able to work. Authorities were able to verify that he did in fact have a back surgery on May 8th, 1993. So you're probably thinking, why would Melissa, a 15-year-old, talk to a man she knew was 35 years old? Well, you have to think that Alan used a different name. Now, I cannot be 100% sure of this, but I would guess that he also used a different age. Now, he looked very young around the year of 1993. He could have definitely passed for somebody in his early 20s. I'm not entirely sure if he did use a different age. This was never something that was talked about in her journal. Most of her journal entries were very brief and just to the point of what she did that day. I wouldn't put it past him to use a different age because you have to think Melissa was 15, he was 35. That's a 20-year difference. Now, Melissa was a very smart girl. I don't think she would have just voluntarily spoken to a 35-year-old and just gone out with this person, but of course, you can't be too sure. Now, Alan Dean, there was a lot of things to authorities at the very beginning that seemed very fishy. For one, Alan claimed that he had no idea Melissa was dead. That's a possibility, but you have to think, what are the chances of somebody in months' time not hearing of a teenager who he had some connection to being murdered and being disposed of in an area only 3 miles from where he lived? That would be very coincidental. Also, in Alan's line of work, he had access to a wide variety of chemicals. He was a mechanic, and heptane was found in her system, and heptane, of course, is in gasoline. It's a little ironic, but we'll be coming back to Alan Dean in a few. As time went on, Melissa's mother, Sharon Lee, decided to try to pick up her life again. She was still mourning and trying to fight for justice in her daughter's murder, but she also had 2 other children to think about. Her son Eric, who was 19 years old, and her daughter Kelly, who was 13 years old. She also feared for them, not knowing if the person responsible for Melissa's murder would come back and claim another life, so she decided to move across the country to Tennessee, saying she just couldn't handle it in Washington anymore. She just had to get away. She did get away from the area, but she decided the next year in 1994 to come back to the area and try to help her daughter's case in any way that she could. Her fiance persuaded her that they were going to save up money and then she was going to go back to the area and put up ads, flyers, and offer up a reward. And the reward at the time was set for $10,000 for anyone who came forward with any solid information about Melissa's murder that would lead to an arrest. Within 3 weeks' time, though, money was dwindling down and Sharon was emotionally and mentally exhausted, and not knowing what happened to her daughter was literally driving her crazy. She said it was literally driving her insane not knowing who was responsible for her daughter's murder. Even with a reward posted and flyers up and the word being circulated about this murder even more than ever, nothing much came of it. No solid leads came in. In that year of 1994, she told the Daily Herald, "I can't go on with my life with this hanging over me. It's like it's there every single day, every single night. I want somebody to be caught, not only so Melissa can be at rest, but so I can be at rest." Through the years, people have worked tirelessly to not have Melissa's case be forgotten. For many years, Melissa's face appeared on the King of Diamonds playing card that was distributed to prisoners in the area. Prisoners may recognize the individuals, or the description may jog a memory, and they may come forward to authorities with information they have about the case. Distributing playing cards that feature unsolved homicides and missing persons on them is something that dates back to the 1970s, and many cases have been solved by doing this. But this wouldn't be what solves Melissa's case. The thing that solved Melissa's case would be a cigarette. Well, not like technically the cigarette, but the DNA on this cigarette. After DNA testing became a thing, they found a man's DNA on Melissa's underwear, and they decided quite a few times since DNA testing became a thing to run this DNA through their database, and unfortunately they never found a solid match. With the help of a genealogist named C.C. Moore, they were able to create an entire DNA profile on this unknown man. Now, CeCe Moore has done so much to help solve cold cases for many years. She's done such amazing work that it actually earned her a television series on ABC called The Genetic Detective, which if you need a new true crime TV show to watch, I highly recommend checking out The Genetic Detective. In late 2018, the DNA of this man was uploaded onto GEDmatch, a public genealogy database that I have talked about many times on my channel. CeCe Moore was able to create an entire family tree from this DNA and searched for the exact spot where two branches of the tree would cross at the man's mother and father. She found 2 promising matches, 3 potentially promising matches, and many more distant matches, according to HeraldNet.com. One of the names on this list was very familiar to authorities. It was Alan Dean. In July of 2019, they were on a mission to obtain some of Alan's DNA. And what they ended up doing wasn't exactly the most intelligent plan, but I do commend their creativity. They had 3 undercover police officers go to his house and knock on his door, and when he opened the door, they asked him to try out new chewing gum. They wanted him to try this chewing gum, and then they were going to ask him how he liked it, and they were hopefully going to get that chewing gum, bring it back to the lab, and test it against the DNA that they had on file that came from Melissa's underwear. But he was onto them pretty quickly, and his exact words were, "You're not here to collect my DNA, right?" So that sort of failed. So they had to get his DNA another way. In April of 2020, which was quite some time later, they decided that they were going to put Mr. Dean under surveillance. And this loser didn't really leave the house at all. They were just outside waiting for him to do something, and he just like never left his house. But he did end up coming out to smoke a cigarette. He came outside, smoked his cigarette, discarded it. They were able to go up, get that cigarette, bring it back to the lab, test it against the DNA that they had on file. Bingo, it was a match. 2 weeks after they got the chewing gum, the results came back and it was a 100% match. He was their guy, and he was somebody that was on their radar since right after the murder happened. 62-year-old Alan Dean was arrested on June 2nd of this year in Bothell at around 5 p.m. Can I get a hallelujah? Now, this next part, I recommend maybe making some hot tea, putting on some aromatherapy. I like lavender. Something to calm you down, because it's gonna make you a little mad. It's gonna make you a lot mad. When I read this part, I was just disgusted. 8 years before the murder of Melissa Lee, Alan Dean was accused of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl in Scottsdale, Arizona. According to the police report, this girl, whose name I could not find, I think it's kept private, but this girl said that Alan Dean had bought her alcohol and marijuana. And she said that she smoked this marijuana that Alan had given her, and she started feeling very funny. She said that for the amount of weed that she had smoked, she was very, very, very high. She said that she believes 100% that it was laced with something. He told her to take her clothes off. Now, he was about 27 at the time and she was 13. That's a huge difference in age. And she was also very, very high. So she was not in the right frame of mind. So she did what he told her to do. She took her clothes off, and then not that much longer after that, she just fell asleep. She said that when she woke up, she didn't know exactly how long she had been asleep for. Whatever the weed was laced with, it made her completely knock out. But she said that when she woke up, she looked over to Alan, and Alan said, "I hope I didn't get you pregnant." If that's not one of the most disgusting things you've ever heard. When Alan was questioned, he admitted to giving her beer and marijuana, but just like the Melissa situation, he said that it never escalated to anything sexual. He was arrested, no charges were filed, and then he was released. And after this incident, he decided to move to another state. In the past, Dean has been arrested many times for things such as marijuana possession, domestic violence, resisting arrest, failing to obey an officer, and contributing to delinquency of a minor. Yeah, he's a real winner. But because he had no felony charges, his DNA was never entered into the police database. If he just acted up a wee bit more and his DNA was entered into the database, he would have been linked to Melissa's murder years ago, most likely. He was booked at Snohomish County Jail, and the bail was set at a whopping $2 million. When he was in the jail courtroom, he was making it very known to everybody there that he did not want to be there. He kept babbling on and on about things that didn't make any sense. It was kind of like he was trying to bring the law into it and sound intelligent, but everybody there was just like, what? He was saying stuff like, I have it written right here, I'm gonna read it. I decline any and all offers to contract, and I don't concede to any proceedings that are adverse to my best interest. And any profit from a trust made by a trustee is the profit of the beneficiary. Like, dude, shut up. Sharon Lee hopped on a plane and flew to Washington for a press meeting. She stood beside her daughter's photos in the courtroom. Her remarks were brief, but to the point.
I'm just happy I got to live long enough to see this happen. I can't do it.
Whatever you want to do, it's totally fine.
I hope he rots in hell.
Yes, Mama Lee, I completely agree, and I hope he rots in hell too. A detective who worked on this case, Detective Walvatney, he said that without technological advances, this case may have never been solved. And he had a little bit of word for all the criminals out there who have never been caught and think that they're in the clear and that they're never gonna have to face any consequences for what they did. He said that he ain't playing games, that they work with facts and evidence, and it's gonna lead them to where they need to be. Hopefully, your doorstep. Melissa's friend Sarah, who I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Sarah Hinckley, said that she believes miracles happen every day, and she always believed that Melissa's case would eventually be solved. And she was right. At this time, a case against him is being formed to bring to court. So authorities are asking anyone with any information on Alan Dean to contact the sheriff's office at 425-388-3845. They want anyone to come forward who may have any knowledge about Alan's access to chemicals during 1993, or anyone who may have talked to him in the 90s on Nightline. Remember, he used the name Mike or Michael on there. If you have ever went on a date with him and have anything to mention to authorities, come forward. Remember that you can stay anonymous. So that is the solved case of Melissa Lee. And it's a case that I had recently come across probably about a week and a half ago. And I really wanted to cover it because even with everything going on in the world right now, this case was still ultimately solved. One thing that I found very interesting about this case personally is the journal. Now, without that journal, without Melissa being the type of person to write things down about her everyday life, this case may have taken a lot longer to be solved. If Melissa hadn't written about Alan, if she hadn't put his phone number down in her address book, he wouldn't have been somebody that they originally looked at. He wouldn't have been somebody that they kept to the side to occasionally look back on. He wouldn't have been somebody that they had their eye on. And the sad part is that Melissa only knew this man for about a month before he took her life. In her journal entry where she did mention that he had picked her and somebody else up, I couldn't find any information about who that person was. I'm not sure if it was one of her friends or somebody that he knew, but somebody else was there during that meeting. So I personally really wonder who that person was and if it was ever found out who they were and if they had anything else to bring to the case. There's also something in my personal opinion that you really need to look at in this case, and that is that after the first incident in Scottsdale, Arizona, which who knows if that was the first incident or not, but it's the first documented incident against Alan, he moved. After police started looking at him when it came to the murder of Melissa, I'm surprised that he also didn't move. Maybe he didn't want to move because he didn't want it to make him look any more suspicious, but it is surprising that he didn't end up moving to another state again. It's almost like since he wasn't caught for that murder in any way, there was nothing really to significantly tie him to her murder. He didn't decide to move. So it kind of makes you think, are there possibly other incidences in that area that also occurred? Things that he was also responsible for, that he was never caught for. And because he was never caught for those things, he also never decided to move. He just decided to stay in that area. I mean, a lot of people who do take someone's life do end up going on to take another person's life. So is there somebody else in that area who was murdered who he's also responsible for that as well? It's just something that I was kind of thinking about. I'm just saying that sexually assaulting a girl 8 years earlier and then going on to take a girl's life, I feel like the chances of him never doing anything else for all of these years is very, very slim. He was somebody with a long list of offenses, but none of those were felony charges, so he was never put into the database. I wonder now that he is finally put into the database if they've been able to possibly connect any other crimes to him as well. If that does happen, I'm sure they'll release it to the public, but I'm just saying you have no idea what's going on right this very second. Now that he's in the database, they may be able to solve another unsolved crime in that area. Melissa was a gorgeous young girl who had so many aspirations in life, and she didn't get a chance to achieve any of her long-term goals. I mean, her life was just snatched from her. And her life was snatched from her by doing something that so many of us do on a daily basis, and that's meeting someone new. Definitely let me know your thoughts about this case down below, and like always with every single case, leave some love down in the comments because you never know what family or friends of the victims may come across this video. And like I've said so many times before, I've been reached out to by family members and friends of the victims, and they've told me how sweet the comments were and how it just made their day, so keep that in mind. For all of September, I'm going to be doing solved cases. Like I said, I don't have a set schedule for when I'm going to be uploading, just whenever I get those videos out. So make sure to have the bell notification on to be notified when I upload. Keep in mind that I do have a new email set up if you do want to send in case requests. Right now, I'm taking requests for, of course, solved cases. You can email me at gabulosiscaserequests@gmail.com. I've dug very deep on the internet for a lot of the cases that I'm going to cover. A lot of the cases I know that most of you have not heard of, so I'm very excited to cover them. With all that being said, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys. I know at the end of my videos, I've been showing my cat Theta a lot because she's my little channel mascot, but I thought I'd show my other cat. Hi. She hates the camera.